Hello, welcome to our Discover Bear Creek virtual middle school open house this afternoon. We're so happy that you could join us to hear a little bit more about our middle school program. My name is Courtney Kors, and I oversee the application and admission process for students applying to grades 5 through 8. In our time together this afternoon, you're going to hear a lot about our program itself from Middle School Division Head Jenn McDonough and Middle School Dean of Students Mr. Nathan Pettit. After they're done sharing about the program itself, we'll take a moment to talk about some details regarding important dates for the admissions process, and you'll also get to hear about our tuition assistance and scholarship opportunities. And then at the end of our time today, we'll end with some Q&A, and that'll be optional. Hopefully, we're able to answer all your questions during this time, but of course, if you still have questions remaining at the end of the open house time today, we'll have a time for Q&A at the end. But to start us off, I'd like to introduce you to our Vice President of Academic Affairs, Mrs. Karen Blankenbeckler. Karen has been at Bear Creek since 1990, and she currently oversees the academic program for all divisions, which includes preschool through grade 12. And to start us off, she's going to share a bit about Bear Creek's history and our mission. So Karen?
Thank you, Courtney. It's so great to be with you all this afternoon. And after 33 years at the Bear Creek School, you would guess that I'm pretty passionate about what we do here, and you'll find that we're very intentional about the choices that we make at Bear Creek. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the beginnings of Bear Creek because it tells you a lot about us, I think. Nancy Price, who was our original head and founder, moved up to this area from California, and she was looking for a school for her own children. And she really wanted two things that you will see in our mission statement. She wanted excellent, high quality education, and then she wanted it from a faith perspective. And so she couldn't find just the school for her, so she decided she needed to start her own school so that she could have all those things. She also had just finished a master's degree in what makes a great, or in education, and she wrote a paper on what makes great schools based on research. And so when she started the Bear Creek School, she put all of those elements into the school. And I'll tell you about a few of those that are part of our mission statement. So we want to be high quality. We believe that you set the bar high, and it's amazing what kids can do. And we just keep challenging them to reach higher and higher. And Bear Creek's a great place for that, where kids learn so much. We do approach things from a Christian perspective, and that's interwoven in all of what we do and our philosophy. And then nurturing environment. We want Bear Creek to be a great place for all kids, and to grow into the individual God intends is a really important part of the mission statement, because we don't think there are any cookie cutter kids. We believe they're each made in God's image, and they have value, and they come into this place as a unique individual, and we want to treat them that way. We want to meet their needs, help them grow, challenge them, and support them in all the ways needed. And so it's an exciting place to be. We in the middle school years, they particularly, so we started Bear Creek as a lower school, and we had some of these goals like high quality and small class sizes, nurturing, and that same mission statement we wanted to keep true as we added a middle school and a high school. But that meant we needed to think very carefully and intentionally about what does nurturing look like in middle school as compared to lower school. Well, we know that all kids need to be in an environment where they feel safe and they feel cared for and they feel known, and they're going to thrive best in that kind of environment. So that is true of both lower school and middle school, but middle school students are very different than lower school students. Their needs are different. The way they learn is different. The way they're encouraged is different. So we go about the way that we do things day in, day out in a way that is nurturing for students that age. We affectionately call the middle school years predictably unpredictable, because they go from the grammar stage and the lower school years where they're pretty black and white, and they take most of their instruction from their teachers, to a place in middle school where the world's not quite so black and white and they're trying to figure a lot of things out. And they're also learning a lot about and from their peers. So that's really important to consider in the middle school years. In the middle school, the way that they learn, they're in the dialectic years of learning. They still keep building up the knowledge and understanding of each subject area, but it's really important in the middle school years that they begin to apply and analyze what they're learning. They naturally do that really well at this age because that's just the way their brains work. No longer are they just tell me about that topic. In the middle school years, they're definitely in the I want to know more. I want to know why. I want to know where that comes from. I want to know how that works. And so we really capitalize on that natural curiosity for knowing more in the middle school years with the way we do instruction. You walk into a middle school classroom and you're likely to see a seminar discussion or small group work or them writing a paper where they're analyzing something and applying something. So the learning looks a little bit different in the middle school years to meet their developmental abilities. The other thing that you'll see in the middle school years is they do a lot of learning by doing. They're not going to just be sitting passively in a classroom. They're going to be actively engaged, whether that's by writing or by speaking or by discussing or literally up and doing things like experiments. They'll be active in their learning process. So that's a really important part of that too. And then in middle school, lots of focus on developing critical thinkers. We want them to be able to think things through really well and analyze things. And they have enough background knowledge in different subject areas by middle school to be able to do that really well. So their teachers are going to challenge them in all those areas. We don't want students who just know things. We want them to learn how to learn, and middle school is a great time to do a lot of that great focusing on learning. So I could really talk all day about different elements of the middle school program and what we love about middle schoolers and how we're uniquely designed to meet the needs of middle schoolers. But I've got some other colleagues here who get to share some other parts of the middle school with you. And I am blessed to work with a couple of the most amazing professionals that I have known who lead the way in the middle school. Our division head, Mrs. Jenn McDonough, has been at the Bear Creek School for many, many, many years. I'll let her tell the secret of how long, but and she was a teacher in a bunch of different grades, and then she moved into, and she was our lower school division head, and then she moved into this role as middle school division head, and she leads the teachers and the academic program. And then Mr. Nathan Pettit, our Dean of Students, has a wealth of knowledge. He first came to Bear Creek as a Latin teacher, fell in love with teaching middle school, and just really got interested in all that kids that age learn and how they think and what things are really good for them. He has a master's degree in biblical exegesis, so he brings that knowledge to his role as well. And so you'll hear from him. I don't need to talk anymore about them, because when you hear from them, you'll get to be impressed with how great they are and how much they know. So I'm going to pass it off to them, but hope to meet you all in person someday, and hope you might decide that Bear Creek is the best educational fit for your children. So take care, and we'll see you soon.
And it looks like we're having some trouble connecting with Jen's camera, so I'm going to toss it to Nathan. I'm going to bring Nathan into the mix real quick. So Nathan, if you could just welcome us, and we're going to bring you into the, we might need to jump around a little bit until we can get Jen's camera back online.
I'm happy to do that. Thanks, Mr. McDonough. Well, I'm happy just to start by highlighting just what an incredible staff we have here. And again, hi, my name is Nathan Pettit. As Mrs. Blankenbeckler just said, I'm the Dean of Students here. This is year number 8 for me, so 7 full years, and this is number 8. And I will say it's been fun. It's been really fun just being able to experienced Bear Creek with fresh eyes over the last couple years. So though I've been here for a long time now already, I'm experiencing it in fresh ways as a parent now too. My wife and I have 3, soon to be 4 children, and our oldest is in 1st grade right now. And Jenn McDonough and I have a phrase that we say when we get to see things as parents, that we really do, all the things that we say we do. And it's so fun to have a role in equipping and supporting teachers along the way. But then when you get to experience it as a parent and see inside the classrooms in a way that's so unique from our role as administrators, it's just such a delight. There's so much joy filled in that process. And so I am just so excited again to meet those of you who can come for our open house tomorrow, and if not, being able to meet you sometime soon would be absolutely wonderful as well. So I can jump in, Mr. McDonough, into more detail, but I'm wondering if I should pause there.
Yeah, it looks like we are able to get Jenn on camera real quick. So I'll toss back to Jenn, let her introduce herself, and then we'll keep going as planned.
Thanks.
So here's Jenn McDonough.
Well, one of the highlights of middle school is adaptability. So that's what just happened there. Musical chairs, musical offices. Thank you for your patience. I am Jenn McDonough, and I missed a little bit of what Mr. Pettit said, but we work closely enough that I'm pretty sure I know. This is year 23 for me at Bear Creek, and I came here before having children of my own, and I thought I was in my last year of teaching because of my experience prior. It just felt like I was maybe not in the right profession. Came to Bear Creek as a favor to a friend of mine, and about 2 minutes into teaching, I knew I was a part of something really special, really different. And that feeling and that knowledge and that reality hasn't changed over all these years. Fast forward, I have 3 kiddos that have graduated from Bear Creek and are flourishing. I have one that is still here and is also flourishing in her time at Bear Creek. But for me, it was, all those things that we said that we do, all that planning that we do, my kids are now coming home with this. It's the real deal. So what we're doing here and what we talk a big talk, but you know what? It's big action that's happening as well. So all these years later, super excited to be at school. I remember my husband saying, boy, you seem so excited to go to work every day. And that was long ago, but the feeling hasn't changed. I am excited to be here. And I have to tell you, we could not do what we're doing without the incredible teachers that we have in middle school. And I just wanted to bring you along for the ride of what it takes to be a Bear Creek teacher. So in middle school, we do the application process, we cull over the paperwork, we make sure that we're looking for the top of the top, and then we have an interview process that the teachers go through. And then when they're here, there's an incredible support structure in place, including a mentor program, so one-on-one mentoring with the teachers. They meet with their division head, they meet with the dean of students. We have a lot of professional development. Wednesday morning, Nathan ran professional development on student life. And so there are a lot of things coming around and supporting teachers. They're evaluated and there are one-on-one sessions that they have also where they're getting feedback. So incredible teachers. I wish you could have been here earlier this week as they were hosting students. We had 4th grade come to visit 5th grade, and we had 6th graders, current students, come to visit 7th grade. And as you can see in these pictures, teachers super involved with the students and love being middle school teachers. It's a very special breed, middle school. So in fact, I have to tell you that my middle school experience was really excellent. Myself, I went to a school much like Bear Creek when I was younger, and I wanted that for middle school students. A lot of times you hear as parents, oh, they just survived the middle school years. Let's just get through the middle school years. No, let it be a wonderful time in their life, a beautiful part of their journey and development. Let them be awkward and let them be uncomfortable with their bodies and their emotions as they journey together. We don't want to fast forward that. We want to embrace it. And I love that we have that kind of infrastructure in place at Bear Creek. So it is a very unique time. Karen highlighted much of this of they are starting to go from being super parent driven to maybe being a little bit more aware of their friends and what their friends think. Their bodies are changing, which means their minds are changing a little bit too. They're starting to go from that grammar stage of I've memorized all of this. Of course I believe this because my teacher said it, or of course I believe this because my parents said it. And they're moving into that dialectic of, ooh, maybe I have an opinion about this. Maybe I'm learning a little bit more that I actually want to apply it and see how I deal with this in real life. So they're going through big academic changes, going from concrete to a little bit more abstract learning. And then they're also going socially. They're becoming a little bit more excited about being with friends, which is, Nathan will talk about this a little bit later, but having opportunity to just be social and to learn how to be social with one another. And then of course, there's a wonderful journey that they're on emotionally and spiritually. And again, appreciate what we have in place. Nathan will talk a little bit more about that later. All right, I would love to cover so much of what we do at Bear Creek, but I won't do it justice. Let me try to give you a little sneak peek into what we do academically within 5th through 8th grade. So our language arts program, our teachers have chosen, we have chosen and collaborated on picking beautiful, rich pieces of literature that we bring our students through. I have to tell you, my kiddos that have graduated still refer to The Phantom Tollbooth from 5th grade, A Much Ado About Nothing in 7th grade, and 8th grade, To Kill a Mockingbird. They still refer to that literature and grew so much through that process. We do take into consideration where they're going. They're going from maybe answering a lot of objective questions as younger readers to moving to having a little bit more subjective, where they're having to infer and they're having to figure some things out and have some opinions of their own. And like Karen said, the Socratic methodology that we use in the classrooms for discussion, they're learning to listen to others, lean in, and then also to find their voice as well. And then it gets a little bit deeper as the years go on. Our hope is by the time that they're done with 8th grade, they are strong communicators, both in the written language as well as oral language, that they have good things to say and that they're not just regurgitating what parents have said or what we've said. Math, many of you might know this about Bear Creek, but we do place at ability level. That was shocking to me when I came to Bear Creek. How in the world do you pull that off? Well, not easily. It is not an easy process. It is both a science and an art, making sure that we're placing students well. We don't want them to be bored in math. We want to make sure that they're challenged, but we also don't want to overwhelm them. And that looks so different for every student. And I love that individualized process that we have. It's been quite successful. And you'll have your own story, but children, I have kids at home that have gone above grade level for math, and it is exactly what they needed, and others that stayed at ability level or at grade level for math, and that was exactly what they needed. And we're constantly reevaluating our students to make sure that placement is appropriate. We get a little rattled at the 5th and 6th grade when they go from that grammar and memorization and everything's very concrete to a little bit more abstract thinking. They're moving into that algebraic way of thinking, and it can be a little scary. And they can start to question, am I good at math? Yes, we are mathematicians and we have best practices when it comes to math. And so we're all a part of supporting that development. There's a lot of critical thinking that happens with math. So it's not just 2 + 2, right? It's how did you get there? What does that look like? Can you visualize it? Can you articulate it? So that's our math program. Our science program in all 5th through 8th grade is lab-based. So our students are able to do a lot of experimenting. You can see in this picture, they're dissecting a frog. Those are our 7th graders. Our 5th graders just finished a brain unit where they actually had a brain surgeon come visit their classrooms online, but it was a really cool experience where they took them through what a brain surgery could look like. And so really rich experiments, hands-on, that they get to experience it themselves. They get to grapple with the information, but they're learning about creation. They're learning about their creator, and they can get excited about designing and thinking for themselves, not what to think, but how to think. And I think about our 8th graders just finishing up an engineering unit and building bridges, and they had to design it. They had to see what would sustain weight. And so the hope would be that that translates not only to loving science, but also really understanding how to engage the world and not just waiting for things to be fed to them, but that they go out and they research and that they get excited about experimenting. Our history curriculum, our students in 5th grade actually go through geography. And in fact, well, they just showed an episode from, you might want to check it out yourself. I actually showed it at home, but most dangerous ways to get to school, a little idea for students to see that a lot of the world doesn't go to school coming in a car or getting in line and teachers are greeting them at the door. There are some precarious ways throughout the world to get to school, but those 5th graders travel the world through geography. And then in 6th grade, we have ancient civilization, and that's also connected to the literature that is chosen. There's a connection there. So there's they're making connections with their literature and with history. And there's medieval history is in 7th grade, and then 8th grade, it's modern civilizations. they're really the students too in this history strand. They're not only getting this in 7th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, it continues in high school even deeper because they're ready for more. They're ready to argue and grapple with some of these concepts a little bit more. But the idea behind all this too is, are they growing in wisdom and compassion and courage as they engage their world? Christian studies, so 5th and 6th grade, students have a Bible all throughout the week. And then in 7th and 8th grade, 7th grade goes over the Old Testament and 8th grade goes through the New Testament. And it's a little more frequent in 7th and 8th grade. If you were touring our classrooms right now, yesterday, our Christian studies teacher actually went through Passover, and it was a very immersive lesson. The students actually participated in going through different stations, and there was dramatic effect with the lighting in the classroom. Our teachers really get into their teaching, but the students are able to learn more about the Bible, what part they play in the history of the world, and are informed about all those things that have taken place through time and God's ultimate plan for their lives. They're able to grow in their understanding of the Lord, as well as their understanding of their part in the world. So our students, I think this is also impressive that we have Latin. I would say at the 5th and 6th grade level, it's exposure. So don't be intimidated at least I was intimidated, but I'm asking you not to be, because the students really do have a lot of good guidance when it comes to Latin. In 5th and 6th grade, there's some experience, there's some historical pieces with it, but it's definitely exposure to Latin and getting a little bit confident about working with a foreign language. In 7th grade, students have both logic and Latin, and it is a challenge. Our students are definitely challenged, and they're uncomfortable with logic, but boy, after a couple months of it, they really are coming into their own and are able to be articulate communicators and sound arguers, if that's a phrase. And then in 8th grade, Latin is the entire thing. Logic is just in 7th grade. We have incredible teachers with Latin. I know Nathan was one of them, but we gained some great Latin teachers as well for our 5th through 8th grade students. Okay, I feel like I'm going really fast, but I'm watching the faces on screen. Am I doing all right on time? Okay. So our specialists and electives, our 5th and 6th graders are involved in specialists. They're involved in all of it. We really believe kind of that end of grammar stage, dialectic stage, beginning of dialectic, they ought to have a lot of exposure to make really good decisions. And we have had students who have never picked up a band instrument until 5th grade, pick up a band instrument and fall in love with it and continue all the way through high school. So we recognize it's important for them to have exposure. So specialists in 5th and 6th grade range from band, music, art, PE, computer programming. I mean, there's so much out there. Library time, there's a lot that they're exposed to. And then they move into 7th and 8th grade, and now there's choices involved. So they can choose from a lot of different things. Fine and performing arts, we just had our All for an Apple play last night with our 7th and 8th graders, a beautiful production, and they were so excited. We have 2 nights in a row of productions. We have students that are going to be in band and choir concerts in December. They're really excited about the arts, but we also have students who just made incredible creations in their creation lab, and they're moving on to their 3D printing creations. We also have robotics, where the students are able to build robots and compete and see how they play out. Computer programming continues in 7th and 8th grade as well. So a lot of opportunity for our students to kind of pick and choose, to narrow down by the time they're going into high school, what's that thing that I'm going to follow? What's that passion? So that is a really brief overview of our academic, what the academics look like at Bear Creek in middle school. And I'm going to hand it over to Nathan to talk about some of the other amazing things that happen in middle school. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. I will jump right into here, and I won't introduce myself and tell my whole story again, since I got to do that earlier. As Jen mentioned, though, I get to have the opportunity to help coordinate and spearhead some of the efforts that happen outside of the academic program. And I think the beauty in this in a liberal arts school is, you know, as Jen and I work together, and as we operate as a school, for us, this venture of liberal arts is so much more than just specific subjects. It really is the pursuit of developing whole people. And when we think about that, we think of their minds, but also their hearts and their bodies and their spirits, and what's happening in their social lives and the way that their character is growing. And Obviously, that happens tremendously in the classroom, and it also happens outside of that as well. So it's my delight to work so closely with Jen and with our teachers and having opportunities to help shape our student culture and then the things that are happening outside of the classroom. So there's a few to highlight. One is just our executive functioning program here in middle school. We have a lot of overlapping subjects and areas, but two streamlined programs, one that's more catered to the developmental levels of grades 5 and 6, and then one that's catered more toward the developmental level of 7th and 8th. And they are working on really just self-management. As we have talked already and highlighted the ways that student development starts to shift in grades 4, 5, 6, and so on. We really are moving, these students from a place where they're being managed by their parents and by their homeroom teachers now to asking them to take on more roles regarding their organization, balancing their subjects, taking great notes that they can then look to later and study. So we have dedicated time each week for things like organization, planning, self-advocacy. We just are doing 2 sessions right now with grades 5 and 6 on task initiation, which we probably all could take that advice as parents too, as we're working with our kids and they don't want to start piano or take out the trash. How do we initiate a task that we don't feel like doing, or as we battle procrastination? And so those are many of the areas that we tackle in executive functioning, but there's more as well than that. We work with WIAA in our athletics program, so we offer athletics for middle school in grades 6, 7, and 8. We have tremendous coaches who are supervised and built up by both our middle school and upper school athletic directors. Many of them are teachers here at Bear Creek 2, which is such a neat connection for students to have time in their classroom and then afterwards, after school as well, to be coached by many of the teachers that we have here. We do have a no cut policy as well, and we really want everybody to participate who wants to participate, regardless of ability level, and viewing it as an area where they feel safe and coached up to just do their very best to grow in their character, to grow in friendships, and then to learn the fundamentals of whatever sport that they're playing. We have currently 3 academic teams right now that meet outside of our normal school hours. We have a math team for all of grades 5 to 8, meeting separately, but any student in grades 5 to 8 can join a math team. We have a coding team, and then we also have an improv team taught by our drama teacher, and students have already just been delighted to enjoy those opportunities to learn together and then looking to the future for some competition opportunities as well outside of school. And then finally, a big part of my time here is coordinating our student life program, and that encompasses both activities and programs that happen during the school day and out as well. And when we zoom out, I just want to highlight really our 4 primary student life goals. And those are right here for you: to nurture each student's faith, to develop the character virtues of wisdom, compassion, and courage, to empower students as leaders, and to develop and build deep community. And I'll just give you a couple examples of each. So in the faith space, and of course, I should say too, these goals don't live in isolated, siloed programs. They happen in the classroom, they happen in some of our student life programs throughout the day, they happen outside of school. Again, we're thinking of these students as whole people, and we can't isolate necessarily certain things as only happening and being developed at one time or another. So faith, though, we give extra time to our weekly chapels. We have dynamic speakers that come and speak to our students, and then we also have a student-led worship team who leads our student body in worship each day. I could say more about our program, but it's a precious place. And as we had our step up day, as Mrs. McDonough mentioned on Tuesday, as I was debriefing with some of our current grade 4 students, they were saying that was one of the highlights of their day for them, was just to be a part of that experience and kind of see the way that it matures and grows as we step into middle school. We also have dedicated time for teachers to have faith conversations with students, both in our advisory program and then outside as well. When we think about developing virtue, we have a program called Rooted, which is where we are dedicating time to explore with students what it means to be rooted in Christ and to bear the fruits of wisdom, compassion, and courage. We have about 10 sessions of Rooted each semester, and a lot happens there. We advocate, we allocate time for community building. And so as students are together in these groups, we want them to form and build connections, oftentimes outside of maybe the friends that they would necessarily do discussions about what it means to become people of wisdom, compassion, and courage, and all that goes into that. So we might have sessions dedicated toward being a compassionate listener. We might have sessions oriented toward identifying and processing your emotions and emotional regulation and more social emotional topics like that as well. In the middle school years, we really want to empower student leaders. And we really have two sort of philosophical areas that we swim in the most. One is that we want every student to know that they have influence, that they are leaders in some capacity, in some way, each day, each moment that they're here at school. And so we start the year with an icebreakers program where we have a lot of fun, big competitions that connect the kids and give them community building, which I'll talk about in a moment, but also team building opportunities, ways that are led by teachers, ways to explore how they work in a group, how they influence the success of the group that they're in. And then we weave certain activities like that throughout the year as well. Again, activities that require full participation, students to work together so that they experience what it's like to have a role in the group and to be a part of the success that happens in those community building activities. Additionally, that's one aspect. And then the second one is we really want students to understand that a huge part of leading is serving and meeting the needs of the people that are around them. So we have biannual leadership retreats that are focused on service. Our 5th and 6th grade students go to a local Christian camp where they do some team building activities and then prepare encouragement packets for a local residential retirement home. And then our 7th and 8th grade students biannually go to a different Christian camp and do outdoor service projects for them. And then again, we weave some of those throughout the year as well, where we are talking about putting compassion into action, how to serve other people. Outside of my office in the hallways right now, we actually have a group of 7th and 8th grade students who, on their own, without a lot of teacher supervision or intervention, are counting goods that are being delivered to our local HopeLink food shelters. They're packing boxes, they're delivering those and moving them around the building, and they get excited about it too. I mean, I had a 5th grade boy yesterday exclaim, not to me, but to a friend right next to me, "This is better than recess." And I think it speaks to how God made us and what our hearts long to do is not to live a life that's fully centered on ourselves, but to use our gifts, the things that he's given us to serve our communities. And so we give students those opportunities, and we find that when we do, they lean into those, they find joy and delight in having opportunities to serve. And so we create those opportunities throughout the year for them to experience that kind of leadership. And then last, probably already mentioned enough about it, but we create a lot of space and time to build deep community. One quote that I for what I know is not sourced, it's unknown, is that you learn more about somebody in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. We create plenty of space for conversation, but we also want kids to play and to be side by side, doing an activity together, walking into the classroom later, having experienced something together and not just talked about their favorite color or animal. Not that those things are a waste of time, but when they can have an experience, then there's something beautiful there. One of the highlights for us is we go on multiple socials off campus each year, both for 5th, 6th, and for 7th and 8th, but then we also host one each year as well. We alternate between a live action clue night where teachers are in costume. It's just this whole show that the students just absolutely love, and the teachers love too. And then we have alternatively a live action social, which again involves lights, costumes, just a whole lot of fun on campus where we get to create these neat experiences for our students. So that's a little bit about student life. And now I'd love to kick it over to our admissions team for the next step.
Thank you, Nathan. So I want to recognize we have probably a variety of people who are listening and watching today. So I know we have some current families, so a little information for you, some applicant families, little information for you, and then also those of you who are considering applying, but maybe you haven't started that process yet and want to address that as well. Just some important dates to keep in mind. If you are a current family and you have another child, you maybe have one or more children enrolled, but you have one or more that you are in the process of having apply, the deadline for your application is December 12th. And all other new applicants, that application deadline is January 23rd. If you haven't started an application yet, the process is really easy to start. You would go to the admissions page on our school website, and you would create a username and password, and that creates access to the admissions portal. And then the first step in creating the application is just to fill out some basic family information, contact information, and then at that point we consider the application started. So I want to encourage you to do that. If you're considering applying, we would encourage you to move forward and begin the process. And then in terms of other important dates, so for most siblings of Bear Creek students, you could expect to hear an admission decision by January 17th, and that aligns with our re-enrollment process. And then for all new applicants to grades K through 8, where the whole family would be new to Bear Creek, most of those decision notifications would be distributed on March 10th. And every now and then some might be notified early depending on situations. But we always say if you don't apply, you won't get in. So we encourage you, if you're interested at all, to start that application process. And then you'll see in a bit, depending on the age of your child, I know today has been specific to middle school, but if you have a younger student or older student or child that you are looking to possibly apply for them as well, there would be different people within our admissions office that you would work closely with during that application process. And one last note, obviously if you're a current family, you've probably been in the building by this point, but we do have some tour opportunities tomorrow morning, and they're getting close to full, but I believe there is some space available still. So if you're interested in visiting the building and seeing the space where all these things happen, maybe seeing some live teaching in action, we'd encourage you. There'll be a link in the chat to the portion of our website where you could sign up for a tour if you think that's something you'd like to do and you haven't already done. And then you can also just find it through the admissions page on the school website too. But I believe we're going to provide a link for you there. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to our Director of Admissions, Christy Hazeltine, and she's going to speak to the tuition assistance and scholarship programs.
Hello there, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So, tuition assistance. We have a need-based tuition assistance program, and this past school year we awarded about $2.4 million to about 25% of our student population. So we are very thankful for this program. For current families, so that the families that have children already here, there is a slightly earlier deadline. If you could please submit your application by December 9th. And that's if you're applying for scholarships, and I'll tell you a little bit more about scholarships in a moment. But again, if there is a potential need, we encourage you to apply. It is very confidential. We keep that process separate from the application for admission or even re-enrollment. So we protect your privacy and it is confidential. And then for new families that are applying to the Bear Creek School, there is the tuition assistance application. We do ask that you submit the tuition assistance application at the same time that you submit an application for admission. That way, when you receive an admission decision, if your child is accepted, you will know if you qualified for tuition assistance. For new families, new applicants, as you can see on the slide, that application deadline for the tuition assistance process is January 23rd, same date as the application for admission. You can also see the fee, $60 for that fee. So that's tuition assistance. Then new this year, we have a new scholarship opportunity. It's called the C.S. Lewis Legacy Scholarship. It is for new and returning students that will be going into kindergarten through 12th grade next year. And it does require a separate application. You can get all the information on our website. And for current families, as you can see, we would like your application submitted by December 9th, and then for new applicants by January 23rd. All of the qualifications are listed on the website. Just go to the admission area of our website, click on tuition and fees. Oh, wait a second, not tuition and fees, tuition assistance, scholarships and grants. And there you will find more information about the C.S. Lewis Legacy Scholarship and the qualifications. And we're excited about that and hope more and more people apply for both tuition assistance and these scholarships. And last but not least, you can see on your screen, if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at the admission office. We are here to serve you, and we are happy to answer your questions. Courtney, I'll take it back to Courtney.
All right, thank you, Christy. Well, that ends kind of our official program for the afternoon. We are going to end with Q&A, but if you don't have any questions or have kind of learned what you were hoping to learn today, you're welcome to leave, but you're definitely welcome to stay on for the Q&A time. Nathan is going to kind of facilitate it for us because we know some of the questions might be more in terms of academics, some might be related to student life, and then some might be admission process. So you are welcome to stay on if you want to get some more questions answered, but if you need to hop off, thank you for joining us, and I hope you found the open house really helpful today in terms of just understanding the middle school experience at Bear Creek a little better. Nathan, would you start facilitating for us?
Yes, thank you. We are absolutely eager to answer any questions that we can. I will say, so feel free to put them in. There isn't really a lot in the Q&A box right now, and we'd love to answer each one. If the question that you're asking might be more unique to your situation, we may try to answer it privately. There's a way that we can do that here, so that we can prioritize the questions that might apply to the entire audience or as much of the audience as possible. And so let's start with this one, and I will kick this over to you, Mrs. McDonough, here in just a moment. So we have a question about student academic teams, and the question is, a curiosity is as to whether any of the academic teams have qualifications for requirements or need prior experience.
Great question. So no, there are not pre-qualifications. We would ask that students take it seriously. It isn't just a end of the day, I have nothing better to do. So our kids are the math team. They take it seriously. They want to compete. They are enjoying growing together. And I would say the same for the coding and for the improv team. So no pre-qualifications, and the coaches are pretty incredible, and they are able to adapt to the level that your child is at. We have kiddos on math team that take math like they're working above grade level. They really are math-minded kiddos, and others that are curious. And so the coaches adapt accordingly. I hope that answers the question.
That's great. And while you're on camera, I'm going to kick another one over to you too. There are a couple questions coming into the Q&A about whether and how we separate by gender in middle school. And so I thought you could clarify specifically which grades we do that in and why.
Yes, so gender separation begins in 7th grade, and it's just for 7th and 8th grade. And it harkens back to a long time ago when there were a lot of studies out there regarding how girls performed, how boys performed when they were in the same gender classroom. And we were finding years ago that oftentimes in like the math and sciences, girls were not speaking up as much or advocating as much when boys were in the classroom. I think we've seen some of that shift a little bit too, where maybe the boys won't, or maybe they'll act out a little bit more. It's just that really unique developmental stage. But we also recognize that a lot of our students in 7th and 8th grade are friends with each other, whether they're boys or girls, and they enjoy each other's company. So I do appreciate that our electives have in 7th and 8th grade, gender mixed, and also the socials, of course, are a time for that. And we continue to evaluate it every year, making sure that we're making the right move for our 7th and 8th graders developmentally where they're at. Are we meeting that need? So it came from a long time ago, and teachers are enthusiastic about it because they see the differences. And again, it is about that 7th and 8th grade. I will tell you, my son, who returned to a freshman year to having gender mixed, said, boy, I forgot how smart the girls are. And then my younger daughter in 9th grade said, I just would love one more year without the boys in the class. So we recognize that there's a lot of thought on this, both from parents and from students, and we take that into consideration as we land what we think are best practices for 7th and 8th grade.
That's great. Thank you, Jen. And I'd love to give one more to you, and then I can take a couple after, but we also had a couple questions about how many classes there are in each grade and what the average class sizes are. I thought I'd let you answer that as well.
Great question. So typically we hover around 18 per class. The idea would be optimally we are between 65 and 72 for graduating classes. We find that that's great for running the programs we currently have. Also, what's really great for the students socially. So not too big that you don't know every name of your every child's name, but not too little that there's too much familiarity with each other. We want to make sure that their friendships are diversified and that their classes are diversified as well. So I would say each class hovers around 18. We currently have 4 5th grades, 4 6th grades, and we are between 65 and 72 in both 7th grade and in 8th grade. So we're hitting that ceiling a little bit, and we have found that to be a really positive thing for the programs that we're running. Was that the question, Nathan? I can see your face. So is that it? Not if I answered the whole thing. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. And then we had a couple questions about athletics. One was in regard to whether there were qualifications for participating in athletics and then which sports we have. So again, I'd love to emphasize that there are not qualifications for joining our athletic teams. We absolutely have, students who, maybe playing basketball and they've played every year since they were 5 years old and want to compete at a high level. And we have students who are jumping into 6th, 7th, or 8th grade basketball, and it's the first year they've ever played. And our coaches do a wonderful job putting together teams that are aligned in as much as possible in ability levels. We have multiple teams typically of each team kind of sport, and that allows them to accommodate those as well. And for students with less of sports includes soccer, cross country, basketball, volleyball, track. Are the athletic options that we have here in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then I'll pass another one over to you now, Mrs. McDonough. We have a question about poem and verse, and will students continue to memorize poem and verse each week as they head up into middle school?
Thanks, Nathan. So yes, poetry and verse memorization continues in 5th and 6th grade. Beautiful selections have been made for our poetry. And then, of course, we're on a rotation for the verse memorization, a 3-year rotation. We want the Word of God hidden in their hearts. And then in 7th and 8th grade, the wonderful thing about all that memorization in K through 6th is they are able to apply those that memorization muscle to all that they're learning in 7th and 8th grade, because there's a good bit of memorization that takes place there. And they do dive into scriptures. We do have a class verse for each one of our classes. And then actually I was in the 8th grade English classroom the other day, and they were reciting poetry all together as a class, a choral response. So we're still diving into poetry in 7th and 8th grade.
That's great. Thank you, Mrs. McDonough. There are a couple questions about homework, so I'm going to kick this over as well to you. What can students and parents anticipate in regards to homework load, average homework times, and things of that nature?
All right, I tell too many stories, but I do have to tell you this one. We just did a homework survey in 7th and 8th grade. One of the responses from a student said, please stop the homework. I am overwhelmed with homework. It is too much. I don't have time for video games. I don't have time for family. He went home. He told his mom about the email. He was very proud that he had found his voice. Nathan and I received an email that evening. Hello, I'm not asking for more homework, but the homework level is actually perfect. And my son, in fact, does have time for video games and for family and for all those good things. So we do put the feelers out there to see how are the students responding to the homework levels? How are the parents? What is perception versus reality? I will tell you that we ask teachers to hover about 20 minutes per subject per day. So in 7th and 8th grade, that would be about 80 minutes of homework in the evening. There are some students that get it done during the day. We have a really excellent office hours program, and it does provide some quiet work time for the students, as well as their homeroom time in 5th and 6th grade that allow them to get some of their homework done. If your child, I had kiddos that maybe struggled with reading. It took them a little bit longer to get their reading done, and others that got it done quickly. So what may look like a reading assignment that lasts 30 minutes for one student might last an hour for another. We would say though, hover around that 20 minutes and then take into consideration your own child and how they process and how they and what they do to learn and solidify concepts themselves, and what your home life is like for that as well. A lot of the kids are in after school sports, after school activities. I don't know about you, but I'm a lot more efficient at 3 o'clock in the afternoon than I am at 9 o'clock at night. So we do ask that you take that into consideration. Then we put our ear to the ground to make sure that we're doing right by the students and that we're meeting that need, that homework is actually meeting the need it's supposed to. Long answer. Hopefully it answered.
No, that's great. Thank you, Jen. The next question I'd like to kick over to you, Christy, if I can. And the question is, what is the acceptance rate to middle school for current students and for external students?
Okay, I just put that, I believe, in the Q&A as a, maybe it was a private reply, so I apologize for that. Just a second, I want to find it. I said Bear Creek does not, oops, that's the wrong line. Bear with me one moment. Hey, Nathan, maybe you could take another question while I look for that. And
Sure.
then I'll come back.
Sure. I'll take the next couple. So we have one question that's here published on the Q&A. You talked about faith and Christianity being the focus. Does this mean that you have non-Christian students too? And the answer to that is yes, that we are an open enrollment school. And so, and if there's anything to add from the admissions team, feel free to jump in. But there is a faith statement that each family who sends their children to Bear Creek signs off on, as that, you know, they are happy to have their kids taught from this perspective, from a Christian perspective. But then we would say the majority of the families here at Bear Creek certainly do personally practice Christianity as their faith tradition of choice. And then, as others have mentioned, it saturates our curriculum as well, so that we integrate faith into every subject at school, as well as our student life programs out of school. Is that a thumbs up? Okay, from an admission standpoint? Okay, great. And then I'll go ahead and answer this next one too. Besides Latin, are there other languages they can choose as an elective at higher grade levels? And so making sure I'm answering this correctly, our language of focus in grades 5 to 8 is Latin. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and Mrs. McDonough touched on those, and she probably mentioned this, but one of those is we really see it as a language that prepares them for future language learnings. An easy access point is the Romance languages, because there's so much vocabulary and grammar that overlaps, but we really believe that studying Latin in general will prepare them for any and every language that they study in the future. And there are a lot of reasons that I get really excited about for that, but I'm not going to spend more time talking about those. So send me an email if you want more info. So are you ready, Christy, for this admissions question again? Okay, great. I'll kick it back to you.
I thought that I answered it. Maybe I put it as a private link, but I mentioned that Bear Creek does not share our acceptance rates because they vary from year to year, and it's based on the needs of the school and how we build that class makeup. And also, information on acceptance rates can lead to student family anxiety in the admission process, and it doesn't provide information about the type of student we accept. So we just don't share it. And mostly because it varies year to year as well.
Thanks, Christy. We have a couple questions that I'm going to kick one more to you, Christy. There were a couple questions also just related to spots available. Is there something general that you'd like to say about how many spots are available in specific grades or just in general?
Certainly. So our re-enrollment process begins mid-January and it goes through the end of January. Oops, I think I cut out. Our re-enrollment process begins in mid-January and goes through the end of January into early February. So I don't know how many spots are available for next year at this time. So all new families that are applying to Bear Creek are applying without knowing how many. But I always encourage applications because I say you don't have a chance unless you apply. Generally speaking, we do have high retention rates. But families' lives change, and families have to move. There's a variety of circumstances that come up. So even though we have high retention, there's generally some movement in the class. So again, I encourage you to apply.
Thank you, Christy. Jen, I'm gonna send the next one over to you. We had questions about just, it looks like I would summarize it as the flow of the day. So the one that's published here is, do kids switch classes every hour when they are being taught a different subject? And there was another one similarly related, how much are they running around, versus stationary in one class? So I'll let you answer that one.
Thanks, Nathan. So at the 5th and 6th grade level, there's a lot of running around. They're all over the building. It's actually a really good thing. They begin their mornings often with some of those specialist times that we talked about. So band and choir and PE. So there's some movement with that as they go into those specialist classrooms. And then when they're in their classrooms throughout the day, there's a little bit of movement because they might be with one class for their reading and writing block of the day, and then they'll move into another class for history and for science blocks. So there is more movement than there is in the lower school, or what would be typical lower school, but not as much movement in 7th and 8th. So that's your 5th and 6th flow. And then 7th and 8th, there are 6 core subjects, 4 of which are scheduled every day. So they start out their morning with 2 cores and they end their day with 2 cores. And in the middle of that are their elective time, student lifetime, chapel. We do feed the students. We do ask that they go outside and have recess and activity time. So that is included in the movement as well. So it's a pretty dynamic day, and I think they work really hard while they're here, not just with their physical movement, but their brains are chewing on a lot. So they'll be tired when they come home.
Thank you,
Nathan?
Jen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So we are about at time, and so what I would say is this: there are a couple questions that we didn't get to, and what I would say is reach out to our admissions team. They had their emails up there. They can answer a lot of these questions, and if anything needs to be clarified by Jenn McDonough or myself, we're happy to as well. So I would just love to, on behalf of everybody, again, thank you all so much for coming, for listening to the presentation today, asking your questions. We absolutely want to do everything we can. And I speaking not only for the admissions team, but for Jen and myself too, when I say that we want you to have all of the information that you can possibly need to make a great decision for your family. And we hope that we get to see you and meet you and show you around the building as well. And are we good? Or Courtney, do you want to say anything else before we take off? Okay, I'm getting thumbs up. So thanks again, everybody, for coming. We're closing out, and we hope to see you soon. Take care.